Hello and welcome to Stafford Connect. I'm Tom Coen. This episode, we're going to delve into a topic related to the one we discussed in our last episode. This time, artificial intelligence. How is it related? Well, AI is all about using computer systems to perform tasks that have historically required human intelligence. That includes things like recognizing speech, making decisions, and identifying patterns. But for a computer system to do those things, it has to analyze a lot of data fairly quickly. Data centers provide the computing power to do that. And that's how this episode, AI, is related to the last one, which was data centers. Now, if you ask most people to say what they mean when they talk about AI, they probably would mention supercomputers that think like humans and are taking over the world. And that's the stuff of science fiction. And although that might be a possibility far into the future, it is well beyond the capacity of today's AI systems. So why are we even talking about it? That's a good question. And it's a question that prompted me to start this discussion. My first response is that where we are today is laying the groundwork for the development of much more powerful and potentially dangerous systems in the future. And my second response, and maybe the more important one, is that AI is already transforming how we work and carry on our daily lives. That transformation has both potential benefits and dangers that require discussion and deliberation, particularly in a free society like our own. With great powers comes great responsibility, that sort of thing. So on this episode, we're going to discuss AI broadly in an effort to develop an understanding of what it is and what it isn't, and how it's already being used to drive decision-making in government and industry. We're also going to consider the pros and cons of its use and how we can act now to guide us for its use in the future. To help us make sense of all of this, I've invited Dr. Don Barger onto the program. Dr. Barger is the Director of Innovations Global Engagement for IMB. So Dr. Barger is here to keep us laymen in the conversation by improving our understanding of this complex issue. Welcome to the program, Don. We're glad to have you here. What would you like our audience to know about you?
So it's interesting. I'm going to be talking about AI today, and my background is kind of odd. And some people would say, "Why in the world? How did you get into AI?" But so my undergrad degree is in accounting. Have a master's of divinity, and I have a PhD in intercultural studies and cross-cultural work with a minor in church history. So not your typical AI person, but I've served with the International Mission Board for 27 years, and I now lead our efforts in artificial intelligence and innovation.
Oh, wow. Great. So sort of the definition of AI, I mean, if you ask the average person to define AI, they'd say something about computers thinking like human beings or better than human beings. So, well, how would you define AI for the average layperson?
Yeah, so I have three different definitions, and I haven't really settled on one of them, and it kind of depends upon the audience and the question. I'm going to give you all three of my definitions, and you can just pick one. But the first would be the more technical, would be AI as a field of technology where we teach machines or computers to mimic human intelligences and behaviors. It understands, AI would understand the behavior of people, it can solve problems, and it can learn from its experiences. That's kind of the technical one. Then another one would be AI is getting computers to do some things that humans would normally do. I kind of like that one because it is kind of simple. And probably the simplest one is just AI is getting computers or machines to act like humans. That's not exactly the definition, but yeah, at the heart of all that is, can you get a computer to do some things that humans would normally do?
All right, and that's interesting. So, is it sort of the definitions depend on what we're having AI do, or is it? Um,
Yeah, and then I guess it's also like, what am I feeling today? Um, but it is really depending upon what AI, because AI is really a broad, um, it's a broad field, and so it can be everything from, everybody thinks it came around November 30th, 2 years ago, whenever ChatGPT released their their model to the world. But really, AI has been around for a long time. But it's everything from robotics to self-driving cars to Netflix choosing what program to show you, um, using Waze or Google Maps to help you get around traffic jams. So a lot of that's been around a lot longer than the little chatbots that we see popularized today.
And that's interesting. So, I mean, to a certain degree, uh, yeah, all the department stores or all the apps or companies that people use to buy things from that integrate people's buying habits. That's the same thing of AI.
It's AI. It's learning what you want. It's trying to predict the next thing, and that really is how if I were to come up with a fourth definition, it would be getting machines to do really good at predicting what's going to come next. And that, if you get into the technical side of what's happening whenever you're chatting with a chatbot, people think that the AI is somehow reasoning and thinking about the answer, but really it is just predicting the next word, the next phrase, the next letter that should be coming. And so it's just really good at predicting what should be coming next.
And that's interesting. I think a lot of people, as you said, just sort of think of it as new. But the thing that I was talking about was what companies have been using it for retail has
Yeah,
been done for a decade or more.
absolutely.
And I guess that's one thing and that's why I wanted to do something on AI is because there's a lot of unknowns or misconceptions about it, and it seems to make sense to talk to somebody who has some knowledge of it
You know,
to break that.
it's interesting in, I with a degree in accounting, I had several different classes in management and different things. And way before supply chain management became the deal that it is today, I can remember in my undergrad taking a class where we actually went and we toured back then it was incredible, but a Walmart distribution center. And I remember at that point, them talking about how they were revolutionizing how when took something off a shelf and you scanned it to check out, then it knew that the inventory had dropped by one. They set a target inventory, and all of a sudden it would fire off through the satellite, which was a big deal then, would fire off to the local distribution center to say, hey, we need another one of these to be delivered. And that was really the first time that type of ordering, this automated ordering, was used widely. I don't think they use it as much anymore because every time I go to buy something, they're out of it. But back then, that was a really big deal.
Well, and then for larger items, if you go to Home Depot or
Yeah.
Lowe's, they use that same mentality of what was. So it really is interesting that it's been along so far along in our history. And sometimes there's people who are trying to make a distinction between the weak AI and the strong AI. I have zero idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that those terms are used some. I think it's easier to look at it and just kind of think about is um, what would typically be weak that you said. It's kind of AI that's trained to do a certain thing, is trained on a specific task, and it follows a set of rules or prompts or programming that the human has given it. And that's really all it can do. It doesn't have the ability to go beyond what it's been programmed to do or think or anything like that. So those would be stuff like a chat bot. Like if you're using Google's chat bot or Meta's chat bot or Chat GPT, it could be a virtual assistant. It could be something that recognizes images. So if you've got a security camera that security camera can see when a dog or when a human walks up, that's just AI that's doing that. And then the strong AI would be more AIs that can learn and reason and understand more like a human understands. So, um, more abstract thinking. It can apply intelligence to solve a problem, not just a specific task that you give it. For most people, I think it's just easier just to think of if it's a really complicated um, response that you're getting. If you think about, if you've seen the robots that several of the companies are developing, and that in one way they're very sophisticated, but in other ways they just do a certain task. So they'll work on a car, they'll carry parts from one bin to another. They're not actually thinking, okay, now that I've done that, now I need to do this. It's not really thinking; it's just doing what it's been programmed to do.
Right. And so, um, most people are aware of the weak version, your
Yeah,
Siri, your et cetera, your
exactly.
phone going up to the iCloud and pull out stuff. Uh, is there any way that normal, ordinary, blah people like myself have any interaction with the stronger one? And I ask that because I have zero idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of figuring out how do you classify one or the other. I think that the line is being blurred because some of the things that I do with ChatGPT or I typically use another model. We use Llama 3.2 here. Um, those models can do some things that are probably more on the strong side, but they really are still. Again, it depends on how you define what is strong and what is weak. Um, but it is becoming more evident that the AIs can do more and more than they used to could do. It used to be you could just do one specific thing. Now I can tell it to do a whole lot more. So yeah,
Now, is there any difference between that and the concepts about deep learning and machine learning, or is that just different terminology for the weak and strong?
yeah, no, I think so. Machine learning is kind of a part of AI. Um, it makes decisions based upon input. So you've programmed something out and you've said, here's if this happens, then do this, and it's really um, based upon how you program the machine or the AI model. There's different types of machine learning. There's supervised learning, there's unsupervised learning, there's reinforcement learning. And so supervised would be really there's just an algorithm that's learning. Um, you can, if you get an email, is this spam or is it not spam? And it learns based upon patterns, or it actually learns as you label that. You say, oh, this is spam, this is spam, this is spam. And it starts learning what is spam. Unsupervised could be stuff that it begins to pick up patterns. You've not really trained it, you've not really fine tuned it. It's just like credit card companies use this. It'll just look at all these transactions that come in, and it begins to get really good at detecting what is fraud and what is not fraud. So the certain type of transactions, the frequency of them happening, when they happen, where they happen, it starts to see that, and that would be part of that as well. I forget what you asked.
Oh
Sorry.
no, and that's and again, I'll be honest. I came into this because I'm an educator, and most of the time that I have heard about AI is students using it to cheat. And
Yeah.
so, um, and I mean, I had a student several years ago, 3 years I think now, who typed in my name, and the AI thing that generated a story or whatever about me had almost everything absolutely correct. There were only a couple minor things they had wrong. Um, and it was really creepy, and it creeped out the students too. That you just type in the teacher's name, and like their whole high life history just pops up in a story
So how
from
do you
that.
think that happens?
And I, quite honestly, I don't know, and that's why I'm asking. So,
So there's stuff on the internet about you that and it has just absorbed that information in, and then whenever you're asking it for you ask it very specific questions. I will say that this is where AIs like ChatGPT kind of stink at creating. I mean, you must have a lot of stuff about you on the internet because typically you don't have a lot of stuff on there, and it'll make up stuff. So like once I put in there, ask it about who I am, and I was a Harley Davidson rider and all these things that I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. So they are prone to hallucinate when you ask it questions like getting into the specifics like ChatGPT. It's not Google, and I think that's the
right.
biggest problem that I see when people try to use an AI model is they don't treat it the way that they don't ask it questions um, other than what they would normally just Google stuff for. So yeah,
Mhm.
so it's trained on a ton of data that's out there and it's been on the internet. So if you've got anything out there about you on the internet, it will bring that in. Or if there's somebody with a similar name to yours, it can bring
Right.
that in.
Oh, so we'll move on to the pros and cons since we'll get to the cons. A lot of teachers like myself will have students write things in class rather than do it at home because we just don't feel comfortable. And there's all sorts of mechanisms to sort of check. if they're plagiarizing. But um, on the pros attitude, um, so I know that in medicine, there's a lot of talk about how AI is very helpful and beneficial um, in different other things. So where do you see that it's really beneficial to people writ large?
So I think, I mean, I just want to go all the way back to uh, the way we use AI today, in that we don't realize we're using AI. So if you use Waze or Google Maps, it is helping you be more efficient in the time that you have. It's helping you avoid traffic jams. It's helping you, if you're a farmer and you're getting stuff to market, and or if you have dairy cows and you want to get the milk to market, the AI is what's working in the background to help the trucks know where there's milk that needs to be picked up, so you're more efficient. You're bringing your milk to be processed at a full truck. You're not driving 50 miles past where somebody else had milk. So there's all sorts of different ways that it works like that in business and makes your job a lot easier. It can do a lot of stuff that is just menial work, sorting and classifying and stuff that would just take you a whole lot of time. You can do a survey of 500 people and you could sit there and read the results of the 500, or you could drop that into an AI model and chat with the results and ask it questions and pick up trends and do sentiment analysis. So those are some of the things you can do. The I mean, on the pros and cons, you're a teacher. I just finished teaching an undergraduate class on AI and innovation, and I actually think that AI is going to change how we do education. It'll change how we evaluate people, and really, it'll change how we do research. I can remember writing a dissertation and reading 400 and something journal articles on the topic that I was writing about, and just a lot of different books, thousands and thousands of pages of book. And then when I was writing my dissertation, I would think, what was that quote? I couldn't remember where it was. Well, now, if you're using AI, you can have all your notes into the AI model, and anything you've highlighted in Kindle goes into the AI model, and you can chat with all of your notes. Well, that's so much more efficient than me having 40 3-ring binders full of photocopies of all of my research that I had done. So that'll be a whole lot better. In the class that I taught them how to use AI to create their content, and so it wasn't allowed just to go ask AI for the answer, but I made them work through, here is the thing we're trying to accomplish. How would you write a prompt that would help you get information? And then before we even did that, you wrote out what it is that you were looking for. Um, and then you said, this is what I found. And then the AI could help you organize your thoughts, make it flow better, make it all in the same, if you want passive or active voice and different things like that. So it was very helpful. Although I did have one student who submitted a discussion question, and he totally used AI for the discussion question, which I said you cannot do. And I didn't need an AI model to tell me that he used AI. I knew he used AI, and I, asked him about it. He admitted it, and I said, "All right, well, here's what we're going to do, and here's how you get the points that you're going to be missing." So I think the negative is it's people use it to cheat, but I think it's because how we test people. Um, I think that instead of testing for somebody's ability to apply what they're learning, oftentimes we're testing, which is just the easiest way for me to grade something, is, oh, it's true, false, or it's multiple choice or something. And honestly, I'm appalled at how easy it is for professors now to just build out one course, and really, because everything is offered online, they really need not do anything. Like, you could just offer my class next fall, and if I've built out all the tests where you just fill it out, the computer grades the test for you. It puts the grades in the grade book. There's really It's possible to teach that class without a professor, and I don't like that. And so my example of how I tested my students was, even on this type of a topic, was we had a face-to-face meeting twice during the semester to say, what are you learning? And then I knew what they were supposed to have read. I knew what they were supposed to have watched. and I would ask them questions to make sure they were internalizing what it was that I was teaching them. That is a lot more work on me, but it was so much more rewarding for the students. So I think it does change how we do um, education in the future. I'll give an example of my son's in pharmacy school, and he sent me all of his outlines for his this first semester. It is test coming up, and it's super complicated stuff. So I dropped all that into an AI model, all the lectures, all the notes, all the PowerPoints, and I just said, make me 100 point test on the study. First, I made a study guide, and then a
Mhm.
100 point test, and I just made a multiple test over and over again. I became quite a popular person in his pharmacy class because everybody now has 10 100 question practice test. And yeah, it's there's a lot of really good ways you can use it. So I know there's a lot of negative ways. I know there's a lot of cons, but I think that the positives outweigh the negatives.
Well, and that's sort of interesting. I mean, I've noticed the idea. I'm probably way older than you, but the idea of research was you opened up a book,
Oh,
and you looked in the book and you read from the book. And nowadays, it's just you look on your device or on the computer to get the little bit of information. I'm sure you get the lovely sentence. Well, when you ask them something, it says, "Well, it said X," and not the sources said plural. Is so that's always. I think that's part of our culture too. Is just the
you know,
shift
I
over that way.
I just published a book earlier this year called Unreadable, another book you probably won't read. And Grant Lovejoy and I we did research all over the world. We interviewed a few hundred people about how they get information and how that information affects who they are and what they believe. And you know what? The resounding answer, no matter what culture we were in, they do not get information from books.
Yeah.
And we can lament that, and we can argue and say, well, you should. That doesn't change reality. In our book, you actually have a QR code at each chapter. You can scan the QR code, and an AI will pop up on the screen and explain that chapter to you. Because people get more information in many cultures. YouTube is the number one search engine, not Google,
Mm.
because people want to watch and they want to get information from media. They don't want to read books.
Truly. Or even that's sort of an interesting element, about how education has changed. I mean, if I give a lecture, it's boring, but if you put a video of somebody else giving the lecture, they love watching it, and
Isn't that
um,
weird?
it really is. But I was at a live TV broadcast once, and I noticed that most people were watching the screen instead of the live people over there. And it's just that our culture is so used to looking at the tube or the computer screen or the movie screen. It just was really ironic that everybody was looking at the little screen and not the live people sitting there
We
talking.
and another research that we've been looking into is like how people connect with other people. And so we would sit here at my age. I would say that face to face, person to person. I differentiate that from, this is getting off of AI a little bit, but like meeting someone online and having a relationship with someone online, sometimes halfway around the world. But if you look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, over half of them do not differentiate the ability to make close relationships with people that they may never meet online as opposed to in person. And for us, that would just be totally bizarre. At least for me, it is.
Right. It is strange. So, um, besides how do you have any ideas or thoughts about how they use it in medicine or in other
Yeah.
fields?
Oh, wow. I sat down with a company in Dallas late last year, and one of the things they're doing is they've developed an AI that listens in on exams. So, you have someone's uh, doing an exam. They come in and they're saying out loud what it is. Okay, I'm looking in your ear, da 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 da. I'm listening to your breathe, your respirations are this. They just say everything as they do it, or their machines picking it up from their stethoscope and everything. With the AI models in the back processing all that data as it comes in. I will say AI in medicine is not new. 30, 40 years ago, they were using AI to detect tumors and different things in radiology. It's just we talk about it a lot more now. But imagine if you went in and you were seeing your provider and they did an exam while you are doing the exam. So my wife comes home and she has 2 hours of charting every night when she comes home, which interferes with our evening time. But imagine if when she was doing the exam, the AI was actually charting everything that she did. It put in the billing codes and it billed everything. And then it gave a differential diagnosis where she may say, well, you've got this wrong with you. But on the screen, it'll say, have you considered that it could also be X, Y, or Z? And then all she needs to do to chart is to accept or modify the charting that's been done, which takes her a matter of seconds rather than spending all the time writing the charts and doing, sending it to someone to do the billing and such. So I think that that part in medicine's going to be tremendous. The other piece that we can't even possibly comprehend is I can't comprehend is how when someone has a cancer or something that the AI could run different predictive models to come up with a treatment plan that is very specific to that person and that particular cancer. And that's about all I can say about that because I'm not the expert in it. But those are realities. Those are not things that are in science fiction. Those are things that are happening.
Awesome. And that's why I wanted to get that. That's great knowledge because I hear of it being said when we had the thing when I was on the board, when we went and somebody talked about AI and mentioned
Amazing.
medicine, but he didn't really go in depth even that far. So it just threw out there. So one of the cons that people discuss, we've already talked about the cheating and the lack of using other sources, but is the idea of eliminating some people's jobs.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, obviously, there's some really cool things that are being done with AI for harvesting crops and even picking apples, picking strawberries, and using AI drones that know exactly when to do the harvesting. And you look at that and go, well, wait a minute, that is now someone's job. Or it's not though that we haven't always evolved in the way that we do jobs. I lived overseas for over 20 years, and one of the first places we lived, very little technology was being utilized there. So you would have 50 men digging a ditch, and I would go, wow, if we just had a backhoe, we could knock this out just like that. And so it's not like that hasn't always been the case, that as new technologies come to light, it does impact the workforce. I would say that if you were a reporter, and which that's almost unheard of anymore, but if you were a reporter and you were given a news person and said, "Hey, there's a protest on the other side of town, and I want you to go cover it. I need you to have 800 words written up by noon today." And if somebody, immediately went and they started looking up and using AI to figure out all the stuff that was happening, or if the other reporter said, well, first I got to go to the library, pull the microfiche, and look at the history of all that's happened, that person's not going to have a job. The person who knows how to use the AI to help them write the report or do the video or learn whatever it is they need to learn, they'll have a much better opportunity. So for me, for many jobs, it's not that you will lose your job to an AI, is that you will lose your job to someone else who knows how to use the AI. So obviously there will be some of the other side of things, but it's again, it's not new. We've always, as new technologies come to light, it does affect the workforce.
well, and on a different tack on the same, but the same sort of mentality. We've had in the political campaign and even in Hollywood, um, AI has been used in different ways, not necessarily the a positive way, for
Yeah.
commercials or ads or one of the stars of a Marvel movie was had her likeness used without her permission. And James Earl Jones, I guess, in his will said people could use his voice in AI. And so it's really weird that we could just sort of you can make somebody do or say things that they don't necessarily would normally have said.
Yeah. So I taught this entire class uh, this undergraduate class, and none of the lectures were me. It was not my voice. It was my voice, but I never said those words. And so I created the
Oh, wow.
entire, every lecture for every session, I created using an AI software that cloned my voice, cloned my image, my likeness, and then I would just do text to video, and it would have me saying all of that in each of those sessions. And I would say that it was probably better, uh, more engaging for the students than if I had tried to sit in front of my computer and record a talking head video, because it allowed me to overlay my image, my head with something else on the screen and maybe a video. So the technology's there. If you check out Synthesia, they're an incredible company that is offering this text to video. The other issue for me was I could teach that class in English, and in 2 clicks, that same class with my voice, with my lips moving, I could teach it in Mandarin, in Russian, in Italian, French, Spanish, whatever language I wanted, maybe the top 50 languages of the world, and it's just 2 clicks to translate all that with me and my voice speaking those languages. So it's pretty amazing. It's also, you do need ethics to use some of these tools, and so you can make people say things they never said um, if you use them inappropriately. Um, but again, it's it's not. I sometimes I feel like people are like, well, we shouldn't use this because it could be abused, and I would say that AI is a technology. A pencil's a technology. A pen's technology. A cup is a technology. And so people have killed people by writing with a pen the death warrant or the death sentence to someone. Someone's been killed because of that. Someone's probably been stabbed. If you look hard enough, you probably find someone that stabbed someone with a pen or a pencil and killed them. I look at it and say, well, just because it can be used and could be abused doesn't mean that we shouldn't use it where it can be used for good. And the reality is, it's going to be used. So I know that it's sometimes easy to focus on the negatives. And certainly, if you're an actor and you're doing extras, the whole strike last year was over the fact that they could clone an actor and then use that person's image forever in different shows. If you think about every TV comedy that you've seen since we've been alive, it's the same laugh track that was recorded forever ago. It's the same laugh, and those people are not getting residuals every time somebody uses that laugh track.
That's true. It's interesting when you were bringing up about the changing the different languages, because I know in the public school system, our EL population is enlarging, and it's far more diverse. And
Yes.
so you could actually take what you're saying is take the material and translate it to a language that is more applicable
Yeah.
to
So
your audience.
I have a little device here, Polyglacia. This is a Virginia company. Uh, you plug this in to a soundboard, and people can open their phone, or you can put it up on the overlay on the overhead, and they see subtitles in one of, I don't know, 50 languages
Hmm.
live, and it just works.
Oh,
There's
wow.
nothing else that has to be done.
Hmm.
So there's some really cool ways that we can use technology. I want to go back to the education piece, because I think that it actually gives people access to tools and maybe tutoring that they've never had access to before. So now AI has become an equalizer that will allow a student who doesn't have the economic means that maybe another student does, but they can now have access to the same tutoring, the same quizzing, the same way of preparing for something that someone else would have been paying $20, $30 an hour for in the past. So Khan Academy, as a
Yeah.
teacher, I mean, this their whole premise is to kind of democratize learning, where that everybody has access to excellent education.
Awesome. And then sort of the last part element is sort of the race for AI. We hear a great deal. In fact, the last couple of weeks, we've had conversations of China trying to get a leg up, and then are we trying to get a leg up? And how much does that race impact what's going on? And are there any concerns about that?
Yeah, so I think I'm more concerned. It's we look at like nation states like China. I also saw where Saudi Arabia recently is trying to get into this. The U.S. obviously uses it, and those are concerning. Probably the more concerning or equally concerning to me is when you allow someone like OpenAI, which is anything but open. If you, I know they have open in their name, but they are totally closed. They do not. You don't know what's happening. So do not put any personal information into these free or even paid AI sources. And they could say, well, we don't train on your data. I do not believe that. They've particularly OpenAI has had ChatGPT has had way too many times where they said they didn't do something and then oops, sorry, we were doing that. So I would I don't know that it would be just because one nation state or another is doing it. I would just be careful using AI with your private data, particularly companies using it with private data. You could be training their models with stuff that they shouldn't have access to. For us at the IMB, we have our own models that we have used open source models. We run them inside our system so that there's no connection to the outside. And so that's about the only way that you can make sure that anything you're putting into these systems is going to stay safe and secure, because there's a lot of ways you can use these to do analytics of your data that coming in. I saw something recently where data is the new gold rush, and so trying to process all the information that is in data. So the race to control AI, I think it's going to be an interesting few years. I cannot predict. We didn't get into like AGI and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're anywhere near this artificial general intelligence that people are so afraid of. It could happen one day. I just think that's a huge leap that we've not. And I may come back and eat my words, but I don't think we're there. Um, so yeah, I would just be careful with your personal data. Know that anything you put on a computer in general, just assume that it may one day be hacked and taken and misused.
And that's a word of caution for almost anything nowadays.
It is.
Um, I mean, people getting hired. Um, you go on Facebook or on different what internet sites or whatnot, and you can see what they've posted, and it can influence whether or not you get a job or not. And that's not even AI. That's just now the world we live in nowadays is just anything you put out there, let alone the nefarious people go and hack the
Absolutely. And
thing
if
and
you
get your
talk about,
stuff.
you and I could be talking about Teslas, and all of a sudden, the next ad I see on Facebook will be a Tesla ad.
Yes.
And we didn't get into that, but I think I'm very positive on the use of AI. Obviously, I think self-driving vehicles will eventually become the norm. I don't think it's going to be in the next few years, but I do think it's going to be coming around. I have a Tesla. I get in it. I leave my driveway, and I usually don't touch my brakes, my gas pedal, or my steering wheel until I get to the office. And it's wonderful. And I pay attention. I'm not sleeping while it's doing it. But I think as that happens more and more, think about the impact that we'll have with fewer car wrecks. Uh, and then how does that affect car insurance? How does that affect organ donations if organ
Oh.
harvesting happens? It's just the trickle down effect of if we can make driving safer, or yeah, there's a whole lot we can get on that rabbit trail. We probably shouldn't.
Well, that's interesting because it's I've never been one to want a self-driving car. I just don't see the rationale, but I'm old enough that I won't have to worry about it pretty soon. Um, and the same way with a lot of things with education is I have a certain number of years left, and then they'll do whatever they want, and I'll be long gone. I won't be on a beach because I get skin cancer, but I'll be doing reading. Probably be one of those few people reading
You'll
hardcover
be
books.
reading.
Yes, enjoying books, and wondering and being why aren't they reading books anymore? So, that'll
But
be good.
it's in some cultures. They're much more in. You would think that people in the US probably think, well, we're the advanced, we're doing this more than anybody. There are certainly cultures around the world that are much more advanced than we are in the US when it comes to these things. And in things like the metaverse and involving uh, kind of digital community type spaces. You can go to high school and you can take classes in the metaverse in some countries, and you're not physically there, you are digitally in class. Which, if you'd have asked before COVID, I would have thought it'd been crazy to think that how online schooling has blown up just in the last 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, there's big changes coming, and I don't want to make predictions because it could be one way or the other. But I will say that it will only be a bigger part of our lives in the future.
Oh, great. Well, I thank you very much, Don, for coming in and explaining AI to us and helping getting people to understand the basics of it. So I really appreciate you
Yeah,
coming in, even if it's by computer, and showing your real intelligence, not artificial intelligence.
that's true.
And I appreciate it, and I wish you well, and appreciate you being with us here at Stafford Connect.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again to Dr. Don Barger for his willingness to join us in this conversation and offer us his thoughts and insights into this important topic. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more in the future about AI and its impact on both government and industry. When we do, we'll be sure to bring it up for discussion here on Stafford Connect. That being said, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode. We do appreciate you and hope you will refer us to your friends. And while we're on the subject of friends, we want to thank our friends at Tilly's Ice Cream for their kind donation to the program. Tilly's is located at the Ferry Farm Shopping Center at 215 Kings Highway. Next time you're in the area, stop in and treat yourself. You'll be glad you did. And on our next episode, we'll sit down with experts in energy. These data centers, AI, electric vehicles, all will need power. So what is the need going ahead? Until then, I'm Tom Coen, and you're listening to the Stafford Connect podcast. Stafford Connect is a Rivers Edge Media original podcast. You can listen to our show anywhere you get your podcast or catch us on your video on the YouTube channel. Stafford Connect, the conversation begins here.